Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone. And now, here is your host, the lovely, delightful, insightful, and all-around great gal, Ms. Barbara DeLong.
Welcome, everybody, to Nightlight. I'm so glad you could join us tonight because I have a very, very special guest with me. I have Elizabeth Joyce visiting, and she has led one of those lives that, you know, you look at and you say, oh, they're going to have to make a movie out of her life, and actually they are. She was born as one of two sets of identical twins. She's been psychic since birth, known for her accuracy. She is now internationally respected for her gifts as a psychic and energetic healer. Named as one of the world's greatest psychics in 2004 and one of the top 100 American psychics in 2014, she's a spiritual healer and gives personal psychic readings worldwide. She's a professional astrologer, spiritual counselor, energy healer, medium, and clairvoyant who interprets dreams, as well as a dedicated practitioner of unity consciousness. Her TV appearances include Unsolved Mysteries, Beyond Chance, and The Psychic Detectives, and she is a frequent guest on Coast to Ghost AM. Her books are available at Amazon.com and her website, newvisions.com, and many of her predictions and healing successes have been documented through the national media. Her latest book, Unlimited Realities, is soon to be a major motion picture. And you can listen to her Sunday evenings at Station 2 on bbsradio.com. Let's find out. She's an amazing lady, and it is my honor and joy that she is with me tonight. Welcome, Elizabeth. I'm glad to have you here.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. How are you?
I am terrific, and I have to tell you, I've read two of your books, Unlimited Realities and The New Spiritual Chakras, How to Work with Them. And both of them are inspirational and insightful and magical. And your life, though not easy, has been magical in many ways because it feels as though Spirit has always provided for you, has always helped you bridge gaps where you needed to, and has been instrumental in helping you to become the amazing lady that you are today.
Absolutely. I don't know how I do without it. I know so many people live in the reality that there isn't spiritual guidance and that the only thing that exists is what they can see, touch, and feel. But you and I both know that there's things way beyond that.
Oh, my goodness, yes. And, you know, you actually had, when you were born, you had the veil over you. And that's
yes,
a very unique thing. And it almost always throughout history has said this is going to be a child who is able to travel between the veils and have an unusual life. and certainly your life has been that. I mean, every time you turned around and something disastrous happened, there was somebody there or something there that would help you through it. And now, you knew you were psychic from the very beginning. But
my grandmother told me that I was, and my husband did, but I really didn't understand what it was until after the car accident, which was in 1979.
Well, that certainly, that was a near-death experience, and that certainly will wake anybody up. Surprise. But it feels, in reading your book and in reading about your childhood and growing up, it does feel as though Spirit had its hand in there, and your grandmother especially. She was, everybody should have a grandma like you did. Everybody should have one of those.
She was a shaman from Maine, and she believed in teaching the child, not just getting them out of the way to keep quiet. She wanted to teach and guide the child. But when I was little, and I think this is important, we never used the word psychic or clairvoyant. We used the word God, and we always used the word listen to the Holy Spirit or listen to your inner self. And that's what I meant when I said I didn't know I was psychic until after the car accident, because I always knew that I could intuit things. I always knew, basically, I could create things, and I still can with my thoughts, and I always knew I could do that.
Well, it's you came through as a natural, and I really, there are children that are born that have great intelligence above and beyond what they could possibly have learned in childhood. There are children that are amazing creatively and intellectually, and I believe that there are also people that come through with the gifts that you have. And it takes something like a car accident to actually convince you that there's something there and to begin to use it.
Let me give you an example of something that happened when I was 8 years old, staying at my grandmother's for that year. And she sent me down to the spring to get the water and bring it up to the house for dinner. And when I got halfway down the hill, I saw a wounded bird on the lawn.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I dropped my bucket and I ran up to the house and I got Grammy. And Kathy was there, my cousin, so Kathy and Grammy came down. Now, Grammy looked at the bird and she looked at us. And she sat us in a circle. Sit down in the circle. And she called me Betty Ann at that time. Betty Ann, pick up the bird gently and put it in your hand and put your left hand over your right hand. Hold the bird in the right hand. And put the left hand over the right hand. And I did not realize at that time that the energy comes through the left hand.
Yeah.
And so I did, and all of us, they put their hands over mine, and we said a prayer and asked if the bird could heal, lifted the hand, and the bird flew away. Now, those were the experiences that I had when I was younger.
Wow. Well,
and it was never explained; it just was done.
But it came naturally to you.
It came naturally, and it came naturally to my grandmother as much as she had as well.
Did she ever talk about her childhood to you?
She talked a little bit about it. She also was a twin. She was a fraternal twin. She had a twin brother, and she talked about her two sisters. But she was always there for people. You must always help others. Never turn your back on somebody. You don't know who they are, and they could prove to be very important later. She used to tell us the story about Winston Churchill, and I don't know if you know that the man that discovered the polio vaccine was Winston Churchill's servant, the son of his servant, and one day he got into trouble and Winston Churchill helped him. And here down the road, the man discovered the polio vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because he was supported and there was kindness in his life. even though he was born without means, as they would say back then. And those things are important to learn, and we learned them at 2 and 3 and 4 years old. Not when we were adults. We learned it as we went along. I just think that's so important. Don't you, Barbara?
Oh, absolutely. And if you learn it then, it comes naturally to you the rest of your life.
It's ingrained in you, yes.
Yeah, and if you wait until you're older and then you have to go back and reprogram yourself, it's a little bit more difficult, but certainly an absolute crucial part of having a spiritual life and pathway and direction. And today, because there is such an amazing new energy that is flooding the earth plane, people are more and more aware of a need to become more spiritual, but not understanding how to do it.
Right. And that's why the teachers are being chosen. The light workers are walking forward. And this all started in the 1960s when the Beatles came.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 2012, which everybody talked about for 36,000 years, came the new energy. It's called the double helix, and it comes from the center of the galaxy, and it's pouring on the planet to renew the planet, to remove decay, and to remove anything that's out of balance, which is why we're going through the chaos that we're going through now. And we will be going through this chaos through the terrible 20s.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the cool thing is, if people realize that in order to have the insight, the perfection, the clarity of vision, you have to tear down the old structures, the old philosophies. And so it's a good thing. You know, is it crazy? Is it unsettling? Absolutely.
Absolutely. But I call it destruction before reconstruction.
Yes.
Because there is a promise of healing. The healing 30s are coming. And the other thing that's going on and why we have to go through this is that we have to eliminate the old value system and create a new one that's more balanced. Because the old value system has been the rich, the rich and the famous. And now we're getting to the point where things have to be more equal. We have to help each other. And we have to grow. We have to grow and embrace the world.
Yeah, and I have people coming all the time, and they say, I'm on a spiritual pathway, and I'll say, terrific, how? And they can't explain it to me, and they know that that's where they belong, but they don't know how to get there.
Well, my first question when that happens is, what is your spiritual practice? The way in is the way out, and the way out is the way in. You have to meditate. You absolutely have to meditate. And it needs to be on a daily basis. Do we take a shower? Do we brush our teeth? Do we eat food? Yes. And this is just as important.
Well, in your book, you have a number of meditations that are very profound. And they are so well explained that take a deep breath. And they can be very helpful. And the book, Unlimited Realities, Born with the Gift of Sight and Natural Healing is a wonderful textbook for people. It is the story of your life, but it also gives people a guidebook in many ways as to how to start opening themselves up to those areas that they're going to want to touch into. And,
well, I had a call today, and it's so funny how when you're going to be on a program and just before that you get given a lesson that you can talk about that will help the people listening. And this woman wanted to get out of Florida, and she wanted to relocate up where her daughter lived. And she was online, and they said, well, maybe we have a job for you, and maybe we don't. And I said, okay, so your next step is to take a long weekend, go up to where you want to live, spend the weekend there, and talk to the people that you would like to work for and see how you feel. She could not understand that. She could not understand that. She could not understand that they should hire her and then she'd go.
Ah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I do.
You
and
go and then you don't have to buy a house. You go and you rent for 6 months and you look around and you see where you want to live and you get to know the place.
I think manifestation is something that everybody understands intellectually how to shift and change focus and how to manifest things within their lives. But when it comes to the actual practice, that's where I talk to people about if you want to, usually it's with relationships, if you want to attract somebody to your life, you have to program yourself to send out the energy to attract the person. And I talked about meditation and I talked about vision board. I talked about all sorts of things. And then a week or two later, one of the women came back and said, "This doesn't work." And I said, "Well, how were you working with the whole process?" She said, "I would meditate for 15 minutes. I would look at the vision board. I would do affirmations, and then I would get on with my life. And it never works." And I said, "And how many times have you said it never works?" And she said, "All the time, because it doesn't work." And I said, "But that's what you're putting out there."
What she was putting out there was her inner anger, because it isn't 15 minutes that you have to meditate. It's at least a half an hour. 15 minutes isn't long enough. It's like splashing water on something. You need to give it the time. And a vision board is wonderful. That's how I met my husband. But you also can write down what you want in your partner and read it to yourself every single night before you go to sleep, because then it is in your system as you are slumbering off, and it evolves and emanates through your body, and it can change your DNA and it can change your vibration so that you can bring somebody in.
Yeah, and it's also a constant thing. It's saying, "Thank you for bringing this perfect person into my life," and it's sort of like believing that something is going to happen. It's not like.
But then people get fussy, and he's not tall, and he's not this, and he's not that. He's everything I asked for, but he doesn't look the way I want. How spoiled can you be?
Oh,
it's pretty funny.
There was a story about a woman who worked in an office, and she was trying very hard to manifest, a person who would love her, adore her, and want to spend the rest of their life with her and cherish her dearly. And that's what she set out for, and that's what she wanted. And she kept working on it and working on it and working on it. And one day, one of the lesser executives, asked to speak with her and said, I've worshipped you from afar. I love you with every fiber of my being. I want to spend the rest of my life with you and make you happy, and I will cherish you always. And she looked at him and said, "Oh, no, not you." And
yeah, the janitor fell in love with her is the joke.
Yeah.
So the janitor fell in love with her, because there are things that we can do to enhance that, and that is to say, I want him well educated. I want him to earn a salary that will take care of the family. You have to add those things in when you ask for balance. I have something to bring to him, and he has something to bring to me. And without me, his life would not be as well, and without me in his life, and without him in my life would not be as well. So that's a fit. Then you have a fit with each one bringing something to the situation that enhances and improves the lives of both.
Yeah, and I think the important thing too is for people to understand, to be careful what they say, because those words count too. And
sure.
And if you're working on manifesting something in your life, make sure it's all positive. And
not with anger. People will say, "Barbara, I don't want him to be like my last husband. My last husband was this. My last husband was that. I don't want him to be like that." Well, guess what? You're going to repeat the process.
Yeah, we do. We absolutely do.
Sure.
I look back over my life, and I've done that. I mean, it gets better every time, but
it does. It's called the same energy in a different face, and it does
yes.
get better every time because you've learned and you're getting tested again. Okay, now we're presenting the problem that you've always had. It could be drinking, it could be gambling, it could be some kind of an addiction, but you've always had this problem. How are you going to handle it this time? Okay, we'll take that one away. Now here's the next one. How are you going to handle it this time?
Yeah, it was funny. I had a relationship with a man who drank, and after the relationship broke up, there were moments when I sat thinking to myself, I wonder if with greater maturity I could have handled this differently and make it work. And don't you know, within 4 or 5 months I had another person in my life that drank, and here I was with greater maturity and greater insight, and I still couldn't make it work. And maybe the reality is that for me,
for anyone, if there's a drinker that doesn't want to help themselves, the reality is to walk and say, I don't choose this as a love identity any longer. Maybe I learned this when I was 3, but now that is not love.
Oh, yeah.
I know what love is, and this is not love. I don't accept it. Once you do that, then you have that little mustard seed of change.
Mm-hmm.
And you can change to a better, different one.
But I think, I tell everyone that you can create your reality by your perspective of it, but it has to be constant, and it has to be strong. And if you really want to make the changes, you have to put work into it. This pathway is not easy, but it is rewarding as heck, and magical. I know that if you had told me 50 years ago that I would be doing this work, I would have called you crazy, and I would have given you cab fare to the nearest shrink. But the reality is, it is a magical way of life, and it constantly, while there are constantly challenges, absolutely, the joy of seeing something unfolding in front of you and understanding that you are changing yourself internally and spiritually and emotionally. Oh, it is. It is.
I explain that very well in my other book, Ascension, Accessing the Fifth Dimension. And I take you from dimension to dimension to dimension. And as we grow as souls, we can literally see ourselves cross over to the next level. And that's very exciting.
Well, now, we're third dimensional now, physically, right here and now.
Well,
where did the fourth,
some of us are not. We're fourth dimensional.
Oh, okay. Because I was wondering, because you speak a lot about the fifth dimension, but not that much, at least in this book, of the fourth dimension. And I wondered.
No, I do in Ascension.
Oh, okay.
The fourth dimension is beginning to recognize that there's a world out there, that you're a part of it, that what you do to yourself, you do to others, and service. That is explained very well in the spiritual chakras and in Ascension. This is what we're here. The soul is here to grow. The soul is here to grow closer to God, closer to love, and to release and let go of anything that is bitter, angry, harmful, upsetting, and unbalancing. So if you had a past life where you did all these kinds of things, you're going to come back and get challenged to see if you have been able to change that vibration to a higher level. That's why you experience the same energy in a different face.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and it's such. I have gotten such a joy out of my trip so far, and I encourage everybody to read your Unlimited Realities, because it does give them an idea as to you can have a life that hasn't been gentle to you and still end up an amazing spiritual being. And well, I would say that you had more challenges than most when you were growing up.
Well, it's funny. I had a twin sister, and we were exactly opposite. So as I went through life, I would have somebody at work that would be mean-spirited. Always there was a woman around me that was mean-spirited. It took a long time. I think I was in my 40s before I realized why. Because that's what I felt I needed. That's what I had learned love was, and that is something I was supposed to accept and have as a part of my life. When I got to the point that I said, this is not going to be what I need for my life, I am going to make that shift. It took me about 5 years, I think, to finally make the shift, and it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was an amazing lesson. I think that most people, basically I try to explain to people that we are constantly working on ourselves, that we're never finished, that when you do finish, you usually go to another level, another dimension, another aspect, so that some people say, I've taken classes, I've done workshops, I'm done. I don't need to grow anymore.
I know, I see them do that. It's so funny.
And it's sort of like I look at them and I say, the fact that you said that tells me you still have work to do.
That they're working in their ego. But when you meet the person who's kind and gentle, who has gotten to a place of inner peace and says, I like to take things as they come, and whatever is presented to me is just fine, then you know you have someone who's on the path.
Well, there are, and happily, there are people like that in this world.
Oh, yeah, there are wonderful people. We call them the salt of the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are also happily still sincere spiritual teachers on the earth plane, and you have the honor of being connected to one of them.
Oh, I was connected to several, but Louise Hay was one of them. And then I worked with Dr. Deepak Chopra. I also worked a long time with Yogi Bhajan, who isn't as well known, but he was a Sikh that came over from India. And Paramahansa Yoganandaji came ahead of Yogi Bhajan. Paramahansa came over around the 1930s. Yogi Bhajan came over around the 1950s, 60s. And he has a center in New Mexico.
Yeah, and now you're working with Amma, which, she is an amazing.
And Mark Tremblay is another amazing one. He's up in Quebec City, Canada. Mark Tremblay. Oh, my goodness. So those two are balanced energies. Do you know what I'm saying? You have a male and a female. You have balanced energies.
Yeah. And did you not? Was it Mark Tremblay you went to the Great Pyramid with?
Yes.
That had to be an amazing experience. I've worked with some people that have done excavations at the Giza Plateau, and I've led some out of body guided meditations going into some of the sacred sites there, and. That
we did excavations there too. That's
what
we did.
What fascinated me was that you talked of the tunnels that we saw when we did the remote viewing.
Oh,
yes,
I drew a picture of them. They still haven't gotten underneath to where I drew, but we did find some amazing things. We found that there was an extra doorway in the King's Chamber that goes down to the Queen's Chamber, but they haven't been able to penetrate it yet. We found 3 sarcophaguses of where some queens had been buried. We found some new things in the Isis temple. And then, of course, I walked the paw of the Sphinx and I drew what was underneath the Sphinx. Whether we'll ever find it is another story.
What I don't understand is why the Egyptians are so reluctant to acknowledge and because I know that the tunnel system, beneath is actually still being used, so they probably don't want that to become acknowledged.
But not that much. No, some of it is, some of it is not. It is very precarious. A lot of it has sunk way, way, way down under the ground. And if you dug in, the sand would cave in, and then it would destroy all that is there. That's one concern. The other is money, M-O-N-E-Y, with a capital M,
Yes.
because you have to pay. You have to pay, and you have to pay. And then when you do pay, there's no guarantee. That's what happened with Dr. Shore.
Ah.
And
Well,
there are
it's
people
just,
that have gone over there and they have taken other people's work and called it their own. So there's ego too. There's so much going on. And I don't think the world is ready yet to know what's under there. We will when it's time.
Probably not. But, I've always, when they talk about a hall of records, I've always believed that we carry our own hall of records within us every time we incarnate. It's in our DNA. And
well,
so,
it's in our Akashic records. That's correct. The hall of records referred to in Egypt is not what everybody thinks it is. They are seals, and they are knowledge of minerals, electricity, and advanced knowledge of
mathematics.
Technology was what I was trying to get, that we are not aware of yet, that we don't know exists. And when those seals come together, they may show us there's 3 elements missing on our elements chart. I think they're going to be brought forth, and I think some amazing healing is going to be brought forth, and knowledge that is beyond what we can even imagine. Just like 200 years ago, nobody thought we'd be flying an airplane or riding a train, for that matter. But this knowledge is so beyond what we know now or can even imagine, and that's what's under the Hall of Records. They're seals.
Well, let me ask you now. There are so many different philosophies as to all that wisdom was here at one time, and then it was hidden, and then humanity sort of went backwards, and it's waiting for humanity to get
happened.
to the right.
That's
no,
not
I know
that
was okay. So what did happen?
What did happen was the knowledge was brought to us from other locations in the universe, from people that knew how to disintegrate, from people that knew how to levitate, from people that knew how to be in a light ship and come and land and help. And they brought the knowledge forward and left records of it. When the humans learned it, they left the records of it, like Atlantis, for example. That was a colony that was a part of the earth. It wasn't the entire part of the earth. It was a section of it, like Africa and Australia. So the people that lived in Atlantis knew that there were other people alive that were not of their caliber or were not of their technical knowledge. Some of them were savage people, and they worked to improve the world. Atlantis people worked to improve the world until it got infiltrated by the lower level, the greed and the hunger and the 7 deadly sins, or whatever you want to call it. And then it got defiled. And therefore, there had to be a crash. And there was. And when there was a crash, and when the Atlanteans knew that it was the end, they took off. They left the planet in a group.
Did they leave the planet, or did they just shift interdimensionally?
It's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Because you leave in light, you don't leave in a metal spaceship that surrounds the body. You just you leave with thought.
Okay, yeah.
I believe that we have a wonderful thought. You might call it the silver cord. If we use that as an example, people can understand it. We have a silver cord. We can travel along that silver cord. When I was aware of ships, I saw how they programmed. Remember, I worked in aviation. I saw how they programmed, and they would be on one planet and they'd want to get to another planet. So they would set up an invisible electrical impulse that would take the ship from one planet to the next planet. We are about to have electronic cars. This is one of the first steps to a whole different way of traveling.
Well, it can't come soon enough.
Well, yes, it can. It will come in its own time. But I believe that that's how they travel in other areas of this universe. And I think it's instantaneous. It isn't 5 light years or 10 light years away. It's at will.
Yeah. There's just, it's so exciting to get a taste and a glimpse every now and then as to what is about to manifest within our reality.
Yes.
And I know.
Very quickly. I think it's going to come between the next 10 to 12 years because we're going to need it because of what we're going through, what we're going to be going through. We have to know that there's something else. There is something else. But you know what makes me laugh, Barbara? I love to hear how, well, the space beings, we're going to shoot them. We're going to this, we're going to that. How can you shoot light? Please tell me that. If I take a bullet through a light, going to do anything? No. It's going to separate some molecules, and that's about it.
And then they'll just
come
fill
right
back
in.
Together. Yeah.
Of course. Of course.
No, it's there's an old movie called The Gods Must Be Crazy, and are you familiar with it?
Was that Mel Brooks? Yes.
I don't know if it was. The guy was flying over Africa someplace, and he had his lunch, and he threw his Coke bottle out of the plane, and he hit a native below. The native had never seen an airplane, and he took it as God. That was God, and God gave him a gift, and they began to worship the Coke bottle. And I think in many ways that's what we've done.
Monkey. That's the 100th monkey story. You know that story, right? Where they had monkeys in California training them how to open a Coke bottle. And they finally trained them. It took them about 8 years. They went back to Africa to get more monkeys to train them how to open a Coke bottle. And at the camp, somebody left one on the ground, and the monkey cleaned down out of the tree and opened it.
Yeah.
That's called the 100th monkey. That's exactly what happened. So the monkey in California learned it, and it went to the whole species in an invisible energy field.
But it's sort of like we're at a point here where we have created gods out of technology instead of where that kind of worship belongs. And right, that's true. But you know what is so neat? We don't know the capacity of our brain. We only use an infinite part of it. And when we do learn to use it more, which we will through the new spiritual chakras, we will be able to levitate. We will be able to mind travel, and we will be able to go from New York to Berlin or New York to Brazil just by doing a nod. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because the chakras have been around for a very long time. Thousands of years.
The 7 original ones have been.
And your book on the new chakras takes it to 12 levels, which is fascinating. And I was fascinated with the different levels of consciousness and insight that flow from the different levels. It makes perfect sense.
Right.
It makes
and
perfect sense.
I did that chart. That chart is incredible, I think. I did the chart of all the new colors and what each open chakra brings and how the powers that you will gain as they open. And everybody says, "Oh, I'm at the 12th chakra now." I started crying. I just doubled over with tears rolling down my eyes. Because I don't think anybody has completely opened their 9th chakra yet on this planet. And if they have, then they're going to be worshipped like John of God or people like that. Because we are just going from the 7th to the 8th chakra. And some people don't even have the 7th opened.
Well, and then you've got 8.5 too, which I was fascinated with.
That's your filter. That's the 8.5 chakra is where your baby bump is. which I think is fascinating. You know, where that soft spot in your head closed up when you were little?
Yeah.
That's where the 8.5 chakra is located, and it's a filter like a screen so that you don't bring in too much of the new double helix energy and burn yourself out. It's regulated by invisible forces that we can't see.
Wow. And you know, it's just in order to get these open, it takes more than the book indicates that there that there are clearing processes and things like that have to go on.
And some of the modalities that we have learned are passé, and some of the modalities that we have yet to learn are coming in. But we have to release all the subconscious. We have so much subconscious stuff, but we're not aware of it. We don't know that we're going to have a reaction to something until something reminds us of an event that happened in the past, and we react to it inappropriately. That means it's out of balance. We don't know that. But when we start to balance these things, I don't think we're going to have allergies anymore. I don't think kids are going to be allergic. I don't think they're going to have the pollen. I don't think they're going to be allergic to cats and dogs. I think that we're going to be in perfect balance. So I'm giving you these things because a lot of people have had to worry and be concerned with these elements, and I think going to all disappear. We're going to go into other things that we may have to worry about, but we're not there yet. What we're trying to do is to get to a point of purification. It's not only physical, but it's mental, emotional, and spiritual as well.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Now, the original 7 chakras had the rainbow colors connected to them. When did that come into being?
Well, the original 7 chakras have been misquoted from the time that they started working chakras, and I don't know when that was. I imagine it was when Mahavatar Babaji was alive in the Himalayas, where he would be teaching those things, or maybe some other people in Tibet. But the chakras are this. The root is red, the 2nd chakra is orange, the 3rd chakra is a huge circle of green light. It's the solar plexus. It's the largest center on the body. It contains the will, it contains the ego, and it contains our response system. Then we move up to the heart center, which is your golden yellow. And then the throat center is your light blue, representing the mother and the softer energies, because that's our voice. And that's what we should be using it for kindness, for explaining, for helping others. Then we go to the third eye, which is, to me, so fascinating. It's a silver indigo. But behind the silver indigo, which is what you have to release, is light. So that's your freedom. As you work with the third eye, that's how you remove all of your blocks and your fears and your hesitance so that you can ascend higher. Then you go to the purple of the crown center, which represents infinity and God and bliss, because when you bring that energy in from the double helix or from any part of the universe, that goes down the spine and purifies. That's why the colors are the way they are.
Fascinating. And so you have some chakras that are a higher vibration of some of the lower chakras as well.
They're different, though. The 8th chakra is crystal, clear quartz. And the 8th chakra is a reflection of what is above and what is below. So the 8th chakra is kind of like a magnet. And it brings to you that which you need to learn, psychic powers, the sixth sense. It makes you want to work on improving your sixth sense, your intuitive awareness, and it makes you want to be of service. That's the 8th chakra. The 9th chakra is the most important chakra in the body right now. It's at the base of the neck. It's where the spine joins the stem of the brain, between the 2 occipital bones in the back of the head. And the 9th chakra is magenta, And when that starts to open, it creates an invisible laser light that pierces the brain through the pituitary and pineal glands and comes out the third eye. So the third eye is going to be your point of power. Instead of the palms of your hands, the point of power is moving up to the third eye. And then you have, the 10th chakra is above the 8th chakra, and that is, it's called amber, but it's the heart center of your etheric body, of your blessed higher self. It's another heart center that has so much love in it that is so beyond the earth plane. And then the 11th chakra is the mother. It's aqua, and it's the color of softness and love and light and guidance and teaching. And then the 12th chakra is the diamond, is the God center. And we also have two more in the center of our feet that are hunter green, and they are your root, they are your foot chakras, which keep you grounded so you don't take off. And I want to I've been teaching the divine seals, and I've been teaching these chakras, and I did create with Richard Schulman, you know Richard, the wonderful musician.
Yes.
And I created a new mantra, a new invocation. Now, there was Alice Bailey did an invocation in the 1930s that starts from the point of light within the heart of God. She wrote that invocation. We have a new one, and it's called Opening the Spiritual Chakras. And it's the I am meditation. It really is the I am. I am, I am, I am. And by the time you get to the end of it, the vibration is so high you can hardly tolerate it. And the first time I ever did that was with Dana Brinkley. Do you know Dana Brinkley, the author, Dana Brinkley? He wrote the book. Yeah. Well, I was with him on a cruise with a lot of wonderful people, and I did it, and people didn't know. I mean, they didn't know what was happening to them, and by the time I finished it, I did get a standing ovation, but those people realized what it was really about, that they were ascending by doing this invocation, that they were ascending.
You have that invocation in your chakra book.
I have it online, and you can get it. I can send it to you. However, I did not want people to just do the invocation without reading the material. Some people will do that, I'm sure. They have to read the material so they understand what they're really doing. Now, some people will bother, and some people won't. And Deepak Chopra spoke of that once when he was doing his chakra lessons. He said, you just can't go to the throat chakra and try to manifest. You have to do it all, because if you leave anything out, you're going to have to make that up, and you're not going to want to. Well, the universe has its laws.
Yeah, it certainly does, and those universal laws have been around for a very long time. And I think that when people try to take shortcuts, they always end up with a much longer trip. And
they end up with a flat face.
Yes, that too.
And I have the universal laws in my garden book, and I have the universal laws in the workbook. But I want to redo the workbook. I want to add more to it, so I've got to get to doing that as well. But the universal laws are down. I got them from the Edgar Cayce Center, and I got permission to publish them. So they are in my garden book, Seeding and Nurturing the Garden of Your Soul, and they are in the Ascension workbook.
Very cool. I know when I did my spiritual development circle online, one of the things that I talked about were the spiritual laws, because, with the deck of cards, I have the spiritual laws in there too. And I had a group of, I think, 70 people that were from all over the world. And I when I started the evening circle, I did say, now we're going to talk about the universal laws. Just which laws do you know about? And they all kind of looked at each other, and one of them said, well, there's the law of attraction. I said, that's one of them. And I said, what about the rest? And they said, there are more. And I thought, and I looked at them, I said, you're practitioners.
That's the only thing they care about is the law of attraction. That's why I did not like The Secret, because The Secret kept out one thing, the divine.
Oh, yeah.
The Secret kept out. It was just all mechanical. There was no heart in that message. No heart.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you totally. And it just, to me, it blew my mind away. And when I started to talk about, the other universal laws that are out there, people just looked at me with mouths hanging open and saying, what? And it was like, come on, if you're going to be a teacher of spiritual aspects, you have to understand the laws that are constantly at work within your life.
And some of these laws are really they're trying to change them. They're trying to defile them and create their own. And they say that they're 100 years old and old-fashioned, and these old fogies are trying to still, and they're not living in reality. Well, we are. The laws don't change. That's the problem. People want them to change to fit their mold, but the laws do not change.
That's why they're called universal.
I know.
No, I just when I think of, there is so much more to this field and this work than and certainly having the ability to be intuitive and psychic and clairaudient, whatever, a medium, whatever, all of that is part of it, but it's not the totality of it. And the
totality of it is really cooperation, love, understanding, and
compassion.
Absorption. Compassion and absorption. We need to absorb that truth and go on to the next truth at that level and go on to the next level without fighting it. People fight it. We'll prove it. Well, this, well, that. They do.
Yeah.
I'll give a reading and I'll tell somebody what they need to do, and they will argue up and down the block. But they don't understand that the message isn't coming from me as a person. The message is coming from them, from their higher self, because that's how I read. And the message is for them to follow, and they won't do it. And so they create their own reality.
Absolutely. And, you step back and you say, and that's why I don't do readings on the show anymore, because, you can tell a person only so many times the exact same message, and they come back and they ask you the same question, and you give them the same message, and they don't do anything with the information. So
and they make you wrong. Kill the messenger.
Yeah. No, so this
I
way.
had one lady called me up and said, well, I was supposed to have a job by now. You told me I was going to have a job. And I don't have a job. I'm still stuck where I am. I said, well, what happened? Well, I got this offer from so-and-so, but I couldn't do it because it wasn't in my time, and I didn't want to fly. I wanted to drive, and then there was bad weather. And she went on and on and on. And I said, you're hysterical. Here you've had the offer, and you wouldn't put yourself out enough to go to that place and check it out. So the job came. It's not my fault you don't have it. And then she saw it. I talked to her a little bit, and I said, do you see that? And she did. She started to see it.
It's just, it's amazing. I tell people to go with the flow as best you can. And I have found that those times that I thought the flow was going in the wrong direction and I tried to redirect it, I usually hit a brick wall.
Oh,
and
sure.
I called those I call my 2x4 moments. It's like the universe.
I have a few of those too. But you know what is the greatest thing I learned?
What?
Okay, now what?
Yeah.
Okay, now what? I have tried this. This is the result. Not sure if I like it or not, but okay, now what? That's thy will be done.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And the other part is the subtleties that the spirit within gives to us that we totally ignore.
Absolutely.
It just, we have a spirit that we're carrying around in this wonderful avatar of a human body, and it's not going to send us a telegram. It's going to give us subtle hints. It's going to give us, indications. And we tend to, for the most part, recognize them and say, yeah, I got it, and then move on. And the reality is, if you really had it, you would have written it down, and it sort of embedded it with.
Not necessarily. You could absorb it.
Yes, but sometimes they say, I got it, and they don't really understand it. They just notice it's
that's
something.
True.
Something out of the ordinary, or it was a coincidence, and there is no such thing as a coincidence in my mind.
Oh, that's true. I remember one time I was driving up to New Hampshire to a retreat, and I had 3 cars following me. And here I am, I'm going up Route 81, and all of a sudden a car goes to the right and up over the overpass onto a different route. And I said, how did that happen? How did that happen? So I stopped the car, I pulled everybody over, I said, for some reason I went off this road and I don't know why. Let's go back. We went back. We went down the road 2 miles. There was a huge traffic jam, and everybody was rerouted back to that route so that they could go and follow the detour signs.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it before I got there.
Well, it's things like that happen to everyone,
and that's not a coincidence either.
No, it's spirit saying, "Hey, I'm helping you out here," and it's to me it's really, really funny. In retrospect, it's funny.
Oh, sure.
Not
and
always.
My nickname for it is a divine setup.
Yeah.
There's divine setup. Even when you meet people that are going to help you, it's a divine setup. Because sometimes there's a lot you have to go through before you get to the person that you're supposed to meet.
Oh gosh, yeah. And be
funny.
Careful what you say, because the universe is listening. And a long time ago, a very long time ago, people would say to me, "You should do this. You should be in this field full time." And at the time, I was teaching, and a single parent, and I usually would say, "Are you kidding? I got a great salary, great insurance and stuff, and I'm putting a son through college. But when I retire, I will do this full time." And I must have said that hundreds of times, and I kept getting indications that maybe that was a good idea, but I didn't do it. And so I had a major
Did you retire young? Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh,
major car accident. I retired in my 40s. I was forced into early retirement because of the injuries. And it was amazing, and I love this story. I major car accident. I was out of work. I had enough sick days to be out for at least a year. I had vertigo. And there's no way you can teach special ed with vertigo. You just can't do it. And so my mother said to me, I was living with her, and she said, I can give you a place to live and food to eat, but I can't pay your bills. And single parent child in college, you can imagine the bills. And I said, well, she said, well, at least you have the readings. And I said, if the universe wants me to do this full time, they're going to have to prove it to me. And she said, what? And I said, I just can't, I don't feel for me it's appropriate to live on this. I just feel that I have to know for sure. I don't want my ego to make this choice.
But can you ever know for sure?
I did. And so the bills mounted up, and somebody said to me, you should apply for SSI.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yeah, I have a job. And they said, yeah, but you can't do it, so you can get SSI. And so I went down and I filled out all the papers, and the woman said, this could take a year or two. And I said, I understand that. I just told people that I would do it. And 2 weeks later, I was approved, and I got a check that went back to when the accident was. And the check was about $5,000, and it did help. And my mother said, okay, now you have extra money coming in. And I said, nowhere near what my paycheck was, Mom. And so another 6-7 months went by, and they called me and said, you know, you have disability insurance. Why haven't you claimed it? And I said, but I'm not actually disabled exactly. And they said, yes, you are. You can't work, can you? And I said, no. And I said, I only paid one installment on this. I didn't think I was eligible. And they said, yeah, absolutely. And they put the paperwork through. I got another check for $5,000, and now I have 2 checks coming in.
There you go.
And that's what my mother said. And I said, nope, it isn't the same. And now she's telling me I'm giving her gray hair, and I broke it to her. She already had gray hair.
Well, it wasn't the same to you because you weren't using your intellect, whereas you were being asked to work for the heart of people, but you couldn't see that. Well, because that's an unworthiness aspect that you have to grow through.
Well, so I waited another 4 months, and they forced me into early retirement. And between the early retirement, which was my pension, and the other 2 checks, when all 3 of those checks came in, no, it equaled to the dollar.
There you go.
And I said to my mother, now I'm convinced. Now there's no question. This has to be Spirit saying to me, all right, what do you want now? And it was like, I got the message. I'm fine. I retired early. I retired in my 40s, and I've been doing this work ever since.
Yeah, I left aviation in my 40s, too, and I've been doing this work ever since. But we both have a mutual friend. We both knew Hans Holzer at that time.
Yes.
And Hans was wonderful to me. Hans was so supportive. I met him through the New Jersey Metaphysical Society, and he always kept the eye out for who he thought was genuine and who he thought wasn't. And we became very good friends. He even had sent me over to New York City to scientists that tested my abilities, which was hysterical.
Oh, wow.
It was hysterical. They wanted me to do stuff that was so silly. So I did it, and I went way beyond. I even levitated a piece of paper for them through concentration. It was pretty funny.
Really cool. No, he was a lovely man. I got a kick out of him because when I went down the first time to read him to his apartment, I took my cards with me, and he said, no, cold read. And I said, okay, and I gave him I gave him the cold read, and I named I think a movie producer that he was working with, and you know, I gave him names and stuff, and he was you know, he was impressed, and I went home, and my mother said, how'd it go? And I said, well, I think he liked it, and he called me a second time, and I went down a second time, and when he called the third time, I said, no, you want to read it, you come to my house.
Or you pay for it, one or the other.
Yes, either one would be fine with me.
You have to do that, yeah. But he was a great person. He really was. He was a scientist. He was not psychic, but he had a feel for the unknown, and he wrote 120 books.
Yeah, I was going to say he wrote a ton of books, and he did the Amityville Horror book, and a lot of it. I mean, he was prolific for sure.
He worked with a lady by the name of Sybil Leek, who was out on Long Island. She was a pretty good psychic. She was pretty good.
I knew of her. I didn't know her.
But you know, there's a whole difference between a psychic and a spiritual being, a psychic and a spiritual healer. There's a difference.
Absolutely.
So I like to consider myself as more of a spiritual healer.
I you know, it was funny. There was the longest time there where everybody was putting a label on everything, like a light worker and a light bearer and all of this.
Oh yeah.
And I struggled really hard. And my husband, who didn't believe in psychics at all, called me a spiritual empath. And
that's kind. I like that.
I liked that too. And you know, but nobody else is using it. So, you know, if you use it too often, you're going to find that suddenly everyone's one. So I'm more of a spiritual student, I think. I'm a student of the cosmos. I just, you know, I love learning.
Well, I remember just recently, I think it was last summer, a girl was sitting, I went and did a psychic fair because they asked me to lecture, and she was sitting claiming that she read the Akashic records. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you know what the Akashic Records are?" And she got mad at me. "Why are you asking me that?" I said, "Well, you're claiming that you're reading the Akashic Records. I want to know if you know what they are." She did not.
Oh, my
She had
goodness.
no clue. So I said, "Well, here's what they are. Every lifetime you've lived goes in a file, just like on the computer. You put things in a file. So every life you live goes in a file, and it goes under different categories. Parts of the life, we all live in cycles. Each cycle has its own category, so they're all categorized and they get put in a file. That's the Akashic Records, and you can open them up and look at them if you use your sixth sense. Now, do you know what the Book of Life is?" She didn't know what that was either. I said, "The Book of Life is what you're living now. You are living your book of life that will become an Akashic Record. And you can change it by going up into the Akashic Record chambers in the other levels and writing in your book of life that which you want to manifest."
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me like I had two heads.
Probably, yeah.
But but the point was, how could she say that's what she did when she didn't even know what it was?
Well, there are buzzwords out there, and people think that if they throw enough buzzwords out, that people will be impressed, and you'll be able to impress them.
And you said two things. You said, watch what you say, and you have to. You have to be responsible if you want to work in the business. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to get thrown off center. You need to know what you're doing and know what you're saying and live it and feel it. And then you can really be of service to others.
Yeah, and, I think the thing that concerns me the most these days, because there are so many people out there that I guess are trying to help other people, but they don't have any background or foundation.
That's right.
I tell people, research a person before you go and pay them money, because if you're walking in and paying someone money, you're validating whatever they say. You're allowing them to implant you with seeds of thoughts, and you want to make sure that they have training,
reputable.
that they have a background.
And there's so many that don't. Most of them don't.
Yeah.
95% of the readers out there have never been trained. It's true.
I studied in the Spiritualist Church for 7 years, and I've been to several seminaries too. So, you need to have a foundation, a background, something that you can.
Well, I started with Meg, but then I studied with the Tibetan monks in New York, and of course I did the Hayrise with Louise, and boy, I sure did learn a lot there. That was when the AIDS broke out. That was the healing part. And then I got hit by the light and wound up going to Vermont, and I met Indira and the Clear Light group, and that was it. And I trained with them for 5 years.
That had to be exciting.
Oh, it was powerful. It was really powerful. Incredible things happened.
I almost want to say to people, go to somebody who's older than you, and at least they have life experience. I had somebody coming who's going through a terrible time. She's one of my students, and her marriage broke up, and she was so devastated. She went to a psychic, and the psychic told her horrible things, and that her husband was having an affair, and that he was cheating on her, and he'd been cheating on her for years. And I mean, I said to my student, I said, "What did you say to her?" And she said, "I wanted to know if my husband was having an affair." And I said, "But you told her what your fear was, and she fed on it." And I said, where is your brain? Don't you know that if you're in this kind of turmoil, that this is probably not a good time to get a reading, because all you have is fear around you? And, she looked at me and she said, "Yeah, I should have come here and talked to you." And I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't have read you, but I would have talked to you."
and help them find the tools to remake their life, or to find the tools to see if they can work it out in some way.
Absolutely.
That's always first. Always first is to try to work. Family comes first. And when you have dissension, it is best to try to work, unless somebody's beating you up or something. That's a different story. Then you don't put up with it for a moment. But if it's an intellectual or a communication problem, it can be solved. The trouble is we're so busy blaming them. We're blaming them and blaming them. They this, they that. We're not looking at the wall that we're building. And a good, insightful teacher can help people see that and begin to ease up.
Yeah, it bothers me greatly that there is, I mean, I don't want there to be a license or something like that, but I just want the public to be more cognizant of how it's their responsibility to make sure
I don't think there can be a license for what they call fortune telling. There can't be a license for something that we don't understand, Barbara. But there certainly can be integrity. That's why I wrote my book, Psychic Attack, Are You a Victim?
Mm-hmm.
I have all of this in that book. And if you really want to know how to recognize them, you can get that book. It was my first one.
Now, they're all available on your website, right?
They're all available at Amazon.com.
Okay.
And on my website. But the website is new, hyphen, there's a hyphen, and then visions.com.
Oh, okay.
And I do have a 24-hour answering service that you could call to ask a question or to order a reading, and that's 201-934-8986.
Okay. I just I tell people investigate, check their website out. See what their background is. I mean, and if somebody
so many people call me for a reading. They've never been to my website. I said, why don't you go to the website? You're just calling me for a reading, and you haven't been to my website. Do you do this? Do you do that? I said, well, why don't you know? You should know what I do before you call me. They don't like it when you do that. But I do it anyway.
I do the same thing. Have you looked at my website? Have you checked out what I do? Have you checked out the things that I'm involved in? And I get the same answers. And it's like, I'm not asking you to go outside. I'm asking you to Google me and see what my website
and this
says.
This is why we have so much going on with cyber attacks and fraud and invasion. And people don't check. People don't look. Even when you get a note from a bank that you don't even have an account in, telling you that you're overdrawn.
That can be scary.
It's the same principle. They're not
Definitely.
looking at it.
Well, with people today, I mean, it is. We are going through. It's almost like we're in the Dark Ages to a degree, and then you turn around and we're in the Renaissance. So, the times we're going through are so challenging, especially to people who are on a spiritual quest journey and looking to expand their abilities and their talents and their gifts and to understand themselves better.
Yes, but that comes again with meditation. That can be worked out with meditation. When you go by the mantra, have no fear, God is here, you are the one that has to take the deep breath and get quiet and just go into that silence. You have to take the time to do it, and people don't.
Well, and yes, and everybody's looking for a teacher or someone who can guide them through this process. And to a degree, there are people like you that can help to a certain degree, but everybody's unique. Everybody's different. Everybody's at a different
And then I get
state.
the ones that you start to tell them what they need to do, and they start fighting with you. I had two this last week, arguing with you, wanting you to hear their storyline, which you don't need to hear because you've already absorbed it, and fighting with you and telling you, I can't do that because this is going to happen, and I can't do that because that's going to happen. And you try to say to them, no, listen. It's time for you to come on a different path. It's time for you to think about something different. How can you do that for yourself?
Well,
take a deep breath in, and then they slam the phone down on you.
Well, and you just said the important thing. Do it for yourself. Go inside. Do the work. Right. And they want it done for them.
Yeah, and I tell them I'm not McDonald's. This is not something that's innocent. This is something that takes years of working with and planning. So why should I start now? Because if you don't start now, you could end up in the quicksand, and I'm not coming in with you.
Well, I tell people often, I don't have to do it anymore, and I don't have to do this, and I don't. And my answer to them is, there's always next life.
Yep, but I don't like that answer. I don't think that solves the problem. No.
Yeah, come back next time. But one lady kept telling me, I'm not coming back, I'm not coming back, I'm not coming back. And
I had somebody do that too.
I said to her, you're absolutely right. Your personality is not coming back. However, your spirit may have a different plan for you.
Oh, I love the people that say that this is the last life on this planet. I think it's hysterical. Absolutely hysterical, because they are not meditators. They're saying that from their ego or from their anger, and the karma that they are causing themselves is mind-blowing.
I had a lady once who sat down in front of me and said, now look, before you even do anything, I have to show you. And she laid out on the table all of these certificates of completion for all of these workshops and all of these stuff and everything. And she looked at me and she said, I am an ascended master. And I looked at her and I said, then what the hell are you doing here? And she just looked at me and I said, if you're an ascended master, you should be ascended. You shouldn't be sitting in a psychic fair. But look,
absolutely.
I'm an ascended master. And I said, you know what? You know what this tells me? And she said, what? And I said, this tells me you had money to buy the paper. But you didn't absorb anything. Because if you had, you wouldn't be showing me these and telling me you're an ascended master. I mean,
so sad. That's painful. It's ego, easing God out. Is all the ego.
Yeah,
and it's
unfortunately.
So sad. It really is. Yeah.
Somebody asked me once, what master teacher did I have? What spirit master did I work with? And I said, Master Charge.
That's funny.
Yeah,
well, I don't think it's anybody's business what master teacher you work with, and you may not work with any, and you may work with all of them, and nobody knows for sure because you know what's happening. And I'm glad you brought that up, Barbara. These people are getting these messages from these invisible beings that are not of the light, and they're trying to program them. And they get them into the ego where they would lay down the paper and say, I'm going to send a master, and make them think that they're, a big important person. It's a power play, but it's not love. It's not God, and it's not what life is about. And you see it more and more and more.
Oh, yeah, and really, one of the important things that it's important, and it's said, and then people don't really hear me, I think, sometimes. When I do my work, when I'm working with someone, my ego goes to lunch. And all I do is
you fall over, the poisonality falls over, and the light comes in.
Yeah.
And takes its place.
And it's sort of like it's a different aspect, and I think if there's ego involved, there's a problem that practitioner has to work through, and it's something that I think that really crops up with all of us from time to time. It's like, oh, where did that come from? Maybe I better deal with that, and
sure.
Another
thing is that when you give a message, it can be so hard for somebody to hear. I always sit with them and make sure that they've heard it and that it's positive and that maybe they didn't like it, but they can work with it, and how. I always make sure I don't leave them in the lurch. I do not read and run. My line is open and my email is open, and that's another important thing, Barbara.
Oh, absolutely. No, I tell everybody that I give a reading to, if there are questions, if there's something that comes up, call me. I'm there, and it's free. I don't charge.
Too. Yeah, you don't charge a second time, right?
No, not. You know, when you get somebody.
People do, but I don't. I have different levels of charging, and you can buy if you're going through a real bad time. Then I want you to pay for the month, and then you can call me at any time, and it's not any more money. So I have a sliding scale with that type of thing.
Yeah, I always have as well. It's sort of like I feel obligated. If I have opened up an issue, then I want to help you put it to bed.
Yeah, me too. I feel the same way.
And if there is something going on, you know, I'm happy to help. Sometimes an issue is above and beyond my credentials, and you know, and at those times I do say, you know, you need to.
My pay raise.
Yep. And I told one woman just recently, I will be happy to be your cheerleader and hold your hand through this process, but you must have a professional you're working with as well. And
that's good.
I don't need to talk to him. I just you have to promise me there is, otherwise I can't help you, because there has to be somebody with really good credentials working on this issue as well.
Or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. You have to see a lawyer. I say that so many of you have to go see a lawyer. Why are you not seeing a lawyer? Why are you allowing this to happen to you? You need to see a lawyer.
Well, and I think one of the biggest lessons that I have learned in all of these years, because between the two of us, we've got over 100 years experience here.
Oh, I know. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's a century. The one thing that I have learned, that it's okay to look at someone and say, I don't know. It's okay to say that. And you know, it's like,
well, why don't you know? You're psychic. That's
yeah,
the
right.
answer you might get. I'm just being devil's advocate here. And you take a deep breath, and I take a deep breath, and I say, because you're not open for me to tell you.
Or it's not
if it's
time.
not coming, if it's not coming, then there's an energy block, and there's a reason for that has to be respected.
Yeah. Yes. And you know, some people, and it happened to me. I was getting a reading from someone, and I asked them a question, and she sat there quietly for a good 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe, and she just looked at me and said, I just don't know. And I had such great respect for her. You know, it ticked me off. She didn't give me the answer I wanted to hear, but yeah, well,
I'm known for I'm the psychic that tells you the truth. I'll never tell you what you want to hear, but I will always tell you the truth.
Yeah, I give them what I get, not what they're feeding, not what they're asking for.
And that can be difficult sometimes, because if people don't get what they're asking for, then they start to attack you, and they start to make you wrong, and it's so difficult. But what's even worse that I wanted to mention, I touched on it lightly a little before, I want people to be aware that there are invisible entities that are coming through people that you cannot be in the same room with or touch, because they're sucking the life force out of the client.
Yeah.
If you go and have a reading and you go home and you have to go to bed and go to sleep and you can't function for 3 days, you've had your life force sucked out of you. And now you have to find somebody that can clear you of that energy. And this is happening more and more and more. So you do have to be very, very careful who you sit with and who you allow to touch your energy. It's the same thing with having a meal. I will not have a meal with somebody I disrespect. Same thing.
Well, good philosophy, absolutely. I know I've had, I'm very, very lucky. For the most part, I don't come across those kinds of people, but every now and then I do, and it's like, oh, wow, I left my car running. I have to go.
And that's true. I don't come across it that much either, but it's the every now and then I have to think about the hundreds of thousands of readings that have been so uplifting and helpful, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
There's
gosh,
so many people that have been helped.
Patrick and I tried to figure out how many people I had read over the years, and he finally looked at me and he said, "It's over 500,000." And I said, "Yeah, that makes sense. I've done fairs up the wazoo and all sorts of things." And he said, "I didn't." And then the radio shows I was doing for a long time, I did 2 a week, and sometimes more. And it was like, it's a lot of people. And I had I tell people when they actually come to the house, and I'm very careful these days. I have 3 cats, and I tell people, you're cat scanned. You are being cat scanned. If my cats disappear and they're nowhere near, they just are not there. If they're hiding, I will actually turn the person away and say, "I'm sorry, I'm overbooked," or "I can't do it today," or "I'm really sorry, we'll have to rebook," and then I won't rebook. But if a person comes into the house and the cats wander around and the cats get up on the table and the cats, are friendly to the person, I figure they've been cat scanned. The cats say it's okay, and I play with their energy. I ignored that once, and I had a migraine headache for 4 days afterwards.
Oh boy, yeah, you can get a migraine from reading somebody. You can.
Oh my gosh!
And it comes from. I've always wanted to know why this happens, Barbara, because I get so curious. It comes from the fact that they've been so closed that when they open, so much pours out that I can't process it fast enough. So it gets stuck on me, and I get a migraine from it. And I always know. And sometimes when I'm reading people, I get an odor or I get a signal when I'm reading them. I do mostly phone readings, and I know what's going on, and I can actually see them moving and doing things. I can see them walking around the house. I can see them pouring a cup of coffee. It's very interesting. That happens sometimes too.
It does. I think one of the most humorous times, I was reading someone, and I heard her flush the toilet, and I said, "You didn't," and she said, "I did," and I said, "I'm sorry, I got to take a break here. We're going to have to finish this another day." It was just amazing. I think one of the coolest. I worked the Renaissance Festival for 8 years in New York State in Nyack.
Oh yeah, I know.
I did.
That is.
I was.
That's fun. I did it once or twice up in Sloatsburg, right?
No, Nyack.
And Ringwood. Okay, we have one in Sloatsburg and Ringwood. That's the one I would work with.
And it was huge. We would get 23,000 people a day, so it was big. And I had one lady sit down and say to me, "You have to give me the bad too. I can take it. I have to have the bad."
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
And I read her, and she said, "But there's nothing bad." And I said, "No, you seems pretty good, actually." She said, "No, I have to have the bad too." And she wouldn't leave. And she kept saying, "You have to give me the bad as well." And I said, "There is no bad at this point in time."
There's
and
only energy.
There were people outside waiting in line, and I had been with her for 20 minutes, and I said, "There truly isn't anything really bad here." And you're working on certain areas, and you're doing well, and you're focusing appropriately. I have to have the bad. You have to give me the bad too. And I said, "There are people waiting." She said, "I have to have the bad too." And I said, "Okay. You really want me to give you the bad?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "The bad thing is you need to have something bad in your life."
Yep.
And she looked at me and she said, "What?" I said, "That's it. Next."
Well, when people say that to me, I go, there is no bad. There's only energy.
Yeah.
There is no bad. There is no good. There is just energy. And then they keep quiet.
Well, not only that, but even when things when people come to me and they say, I've lost my job, I say, congratulations. That means that it's time you outgrew that, and it's time for you to move into something that's better for you.
Or you were put in the wrong place. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
This is a good
somebody
thing.
will come in. Somebody will come in and say, "I've lost my job," and I'll go, "Well, how long did you go to work saying I hate my job? I hate my job. I hate my job?" She says, "Oh,
Exactly.
for at least 2 years." I said, "Well, you got your wish."
Yeah, you didn't actually take
do?
action, and the universe helped you out.
The next thing you're going to do is get out of the fear of not having a job so that you can get a new one.
Yeah, it's just there are tragedies, but my philosophy is that in the middle of every disaster are the seeds of miracles that have yet to be identified.
And don't forget, it is all perception, but usually when people get fired and lose a job, it's because they did something to create it. Let's get real.
Oh, sure. Well,
and
yes.
They have to own that. Once they can own that, it helps them not do it again because they become aware of what they're doing.
Well, and they usually have done it because they didn't belong there in the first place.
Or they didn't want to be there anymore or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
They needed to go into a different direction.
I mean, when I had the car accident and I moved on, I was at a place where I was burnt out with teaching. It was probably time for me to move on. But in my 40s, that was like I still had 25 years I could have been teaching. So to actually quit a job and then say, okay, universe, take care of me, did not equate for me. But
it worked.
It did work. It did work. It was. I think that if you have faith and if you are really working on yourself spiritually, if you're meditating and meditating, there are lots of different kinds of meditation and different forms of meditation. Everybody has and can find their own individual kind of meditation that works for them, and gets them into the alpha theta and gives them the opportunity to do the interior work that has to be done. It doesn't have to be any one particular way. There are lots of different ways to meditate. And so many people, I went to an ashram once and I wasn't able to sit on the floor because of my back, because of my car injury. And I said to the person there, if I can sit in the back of the room, in a chair, I'll be okay, but I can't get on the floor, and I can't, because of my injury, sit the way you're asking people to sit. And they made me leave because it was their way or the highway.
Yep, I had that with Eric Pearl too. That was a very interesting experience. You pay all kinds of money to go to a class, and if you don't do it their way, they want to. And you know who used to do that is Est.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad.
They were tough. They were tough.
Well, they weren't tough. They weren't spiritual. What they wanted was you to participate, and they wanted you to bow down, and they wanted you to pay them money. They wanted you to buy their stuff and to take all their classes. And if they didn't get their way, they would shame you. And I'm so glad that we're talking about this because this does go on.
Oh yeah.
And you just have to walk out. It's the best to walk out.
It's not spiritual.
No, I know. Of course it isn't. But you're there with a group. You're there with your friends. You're there with a group, and they try to shame you. I went to a group once in New York City to hear a teacher who was out of a center that helped children, homeless children. So we went to listen to this guy, and he started using profanity, and he started talking about going to the bathroom and all kinds of things and animals. And I looked at my class. I said, 1, 2, 3, up. And we stood up and we walked out. And I said, we're not seeing that energy a minute longer. And I could feel the energy lift when we went out. And I took them all out to lunch. And what they said to me was, we're so glad you had the courage to get us out of there. I said, you had to, because they were bringing you down. And who knows what would have happened.
Yeah, I did. I went to a gazpacho ceremony. I was looking for a gazpacho ceremony because I wanted to experience it, and again it came to the point where I couldn't sit on the ground, and so they let me have a chair, but he kept talking about what the most enlightening thing about his training was that he had been to Brazil and they had fed him this concoction, and he threw up all over the place, but it took him into another dimension and another level, and he kept.
So he wanted you to sit and break your neck.
That,
yep.
And he wanted us to pay for a special ceremony where he would prepare the concoction, and we would all be sick to our stomachs and yet taken into another.
Jim
and
Jones.
It was like, yeah, and it was like I sat there and finally I got up and I said, I'm just not spiritual enough for what you're giving out, obviously. And I left, and all I could think of was, oh my God, he
That's
was trying
crazy.
in the middle
he
of
was
spiritual
trying to get
whatever.
To get control. It wasn't spiritual. It was trying to get control. It was trying to have power over you and to shame you, so that and these things. You know what? This is the year that we're going to have more of those kind of cults. I had said that we were going to have more cults and more people were going to try to find a leader, and that they would go and follow anybody. If he made a concoction, and they'd have to make themselves throw up because they think that's what they're supposed to do. So
and
those things
we
have to be very careful of. I hope your listeners are getting this. I really do.
They are cropping up all over, and
yeah, they are cropping up all over. And even with Mother is not a cult. Her organization is not a cult. They are true-hearted people that are in service. And we usually wear white, so now she's just having us wear street clothes because she doesn't want anything identified as a cult.
Yep, that makes good sense.
We're in such a hysteric part of life right now. And of course, look at what happened in Hawaii just yesterday, where they thought a bomb was coming. We're in this, and this is going to continue right into the terrible 20s. And we've only seen the very tip of the iceberg.
Well, look at what happened in California. Heaven's Gate.
Oh yeah, that was years ago. Yeah. They took
I'm
the Kool-Aid. They took the Kool-Aid. Well, I'm just saying the Hawaii one was just now. And some of these cult things have been just now. That's what I meant.
But what gets you is, they welcome you into a group, and then the control starts. And
sure.
It can be so frightening that you're afraid to leave because you're afraid that they will come after you.
Well, they won't let you leave sometimes. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what a true spiritual organization does at all.
That's true, and yet people want to belong. They want to feel that they are on a spiritual pathway, that they will be saved where others won't be.
That's why they have to get the right teacher. And there's no such thing as they're going to be saved and others won't be. That's ego. Ego. Again, we're all going to have our own level of salvation. No one is left behind.
And that's what boggles my mind. It's do the work. Do the work and you're going to be fine.
That's right, but they don't want to do it. But they're getting better, I have to say. People are getting better at doing the work, and I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, absolutely.
And to know that. And they're going to be even more so next year. Maybe you'll even start a couple of classes next year because you'll feel that you need to, that there's a cry for it.
Well, it's really funny because I have done workshops and they didn't feel right anymore, and yet
mine didn't either. But
I suddenly have people that just want to study and want to learn. And it's funny you should say that, because there is a group of people that now come once a week, and all we do is hammer at the spiritual stuff, the laws, the different philosophies and meditation.
Like you're preparing them, sure.
Yeah,
that's good.
And
that's good.
And it's kind of
comradeship. You're having comradeship, so that you're building a trust field, so that if something really serious does happen, they can go to that group and they know that they will be helped.
Well, and so somebody said, what are we calling this? And I said, frankly, it's a support group. It's a spiritual support group. And, am I going to give you information? Am I going to give you tools to use? Am I going to help you to work on yourself a little bit more, a lot more, actually? Absolutely. But you're not required to come, and you don't pay me anything. And, if it feels good, be here. And if it doesn't feel right, don't. Pay attention to your body. Pay attention to what's going on around you and within you. And there's nothing, I'm here. If you want to be here, fine. If you don't, that's okay too.
And that's great.
It works. It works for me, for sure, because
it really does.
You kind of, if somebody is paying you money to teach them something, you feel badly if they're not getting it. And if what you're doing is giving stuff freely, and people are there that want the information, that's better. I hate people that sign up.
In a way it is, and in a way it isn't, because I believe that there's an equal exchange of energy, and they can either give me a $10 bill or make me a pie, but there has to be some kind of an exchange.
Oh yeah.
I think that people that don't pay don't appreciate, but maybe that's shifting and changing.
Well, it could be. Some of these people I've had in workshops before, and I've handed them tons of information. They did pile, they did pay. But, now it's at a point where I'm referring them back to the information I gave them and saying, did you read that?
Yeah,
no, I didn't have time. Sure. I said, well, then read it now.
You read it.
Because we're going to work with it.
You're just recalibrating. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's really it's a lot of fun. It's I'm having fun. My new mantra is, if I don't have fun, I don't do it. And it works well for me, because it's kind of like if I'm joyful about something, then I go into it with an open heart and a happy spirit. And if I feel I'm working, then it isn't as much fun. But with the changes that are happening, somebody asked me the other day, how long is it going to be before things get easier? And, I didn't really have an answer. I said, the more you work on yourself, the easier it gets, but the bigger the challenges. So, we've got a long time to go here. It's not going to be.
Well, we have to get through the 20s. And this year is going to be a year of earthquakes. We've had the fires and the flooding. We're still going to have more flooding, because those three rivers are coming together. And there's been a lot of loss. And now we have the flu I predicted. I said we were going to have one of the worst flus ever, and that seems to be coming across. And that's from the stagnant water from the hurricanes.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And that's why the flu shot really had no power this year. It was a waste to get it, because there wasn't anything in it that has anything to do with this new flu.
No, and it gave you a virus anyhow. So if your immune system was down, you were going to get sick.
But that can happen. But that doesn't happen. It usually is about 4 days, and then, you're through that. So.
Well, now you mentioned the earthquakes, and I've been watching the new Madrid fault line for a couple of years now, and it really feels as though, that last one that went off last in the 1812, and it was almost a 9 on the Richter scale when it happened, and the population wasn't around a lot then. There wasn't a great population. It literally rang bells in Washington and Boston. It was so violent.
Sure. Well, we're going to have a few of them.
Yeah, Mississippi ran backwards, and I really believe that the new Madras line is going to go off again, and that's right up, along the Mississippi there. And
well, those three rivers are coming together, the Missouri, Mississippi, and Ohio. And what I see no longer is Memphis, St. Louis, Jackson, all the way down to New Orleans.
Yeah.
It's all going to be water.
Yes. And did you know that the school systems along the fault line have been issued 3-day survival packs for each child, 3 days food, 3 days water?
Yeah, probably, because they already know it, and that's not going to be nearly enough if you survive what's coming. And this was all predicted by Edgar Cayce, and people have drawn maps that they've received from Spirit about what the United States is going to look like, and we're going to be split right down the middle.
Yeah.
And when people call me up about moving, you have to know where the high points are. And the high points are not along any coastline.
No, I'm about 60 miles inland, so I may have beachfront property at some point in time.
My grandmother, Grammy Hempel, told me that all the expensive hotels would be gone, and that all the beaches were going to come in 5 to 20 miles. And she said that in the 50s.
Well, at some point in time, there was a meteor that hit in the Atlantic Ocean, that the tsunami that hit the United States went all the way into the Mississippi Valley.
Oh, I believe it. We're going to have another one, but it's not coming from an asteroid. It's coming from people in South Africa that are dropping bombs on the Atlantic Ocean fault, and they want to create a tsunami to come across the Atlantic Ocean. And they're going to, the Taliban is doing that, or the ISIS or whatever it is. They've been dropping bombs. And the one that's going to be in the Pacific is going to probably come from North Korea's testing underground, because we're going to have an earthquake along Alaska and down through Vancouver and those upper states in California. And that's coming. That's coming pretty soon. That might even come by the end of February.
That's an amazing fault line. And if you could see the island of Japan underwater, it's like an upside down pyramid, and it won't take a lot to dump Japan.
I know. It's supposed to be flooded right up to Mount Fuji, but I have wonderful friends that live there, so I'm hoping that. And why Japan? Poor Japan has had so much of that weather stuff. My goodness.
Yeah, no, now we had that scare yesterday about Hawaii. I don't believe it was an accident.
Well, whether it was or not isn't the point. The point is what they found out from it. What did they find out? They're not prepared. There's no place for people to go. What if this really did happen? That's the gift that they had. And we keep finding that out, that we are not ready. And now they're saying that they're going to take steps. Even the individual people are going to take steps to know what to do. So that is something that did help. That's the bright side of it.
Well, it was interesting that I think a week before Pearl Harbor, a headline in the Hawaiian newspaper said, we are fully prepared for war. Not quite. Pearl Harbor happened,
they were.
and it was devastating. I will not sit back and say I predict we are going to go to war, but I do predict there's going to be one.
So I don't think it's going to be North Korea.
May not be. I just.
No. The war may not even be the United States at first, because it's going to be Pakistan and India. You just keep watching. According to Spirit, that's where, if any, the first nuclear exchange will be, if any. because the people that don't live on the planet don't want any kind of nuclear. Nuclear affects the entire universe.
Oh, yeah.
It's powerful enough that it could throw off the rotation of the solar system. So it's not what you want to play with.
Well, they have in many they have turned off of they've turned off a lot of our surface to air missiles automatically, so that that has happened, so that they are very capable of preventing that. I would tend to agree with you. I think that it's going to be in that part of the country.
I think we really need to have groups come together and pray once a week. You have your group, pray for no nuclear exchange and no war, because those thoughts will carry and they will work, just like vision boards work. So I've dedicated my website Sunday nights at 7:30 to pray for peace, and I called for a complete day of prayer from New Year's Eve to New Year's Day as we enter 2018, not to have war. And I know I had at least several 100,000 praying. So
well,
that's good.
It really, it's one at a time, and I think that we do make a difference, and each voice that's a whisper can become a shout once done together.
You put 1,000 people in a room, and you got power.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And there is I think everybody should experience the chanting of thousands of people together.
Oh,
it is.
That's so exciting, isn't it? Have you ever seen the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas chant? It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what drew me to it. That's the first thing I heard that drew me to the Eastern philosophies was chanting.
It absolutely vibrates your entire body.
Well, what happens is, and this is what I do in my workshops, and I'm having one at the end of February, everybody is breathing the same way at the same time. We're taking the breath in, we're holding for 4, we're taking the breath out. And then you have the heartbeat of God, because you have one heartbeat. So you have 20 people in the room, and you're creating one heartbeat. That's powerful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful.
In Close Encounters of a Third Kind, they had a section there where they had the chanting, and you kind of got drawn into it. But if you're in a room with 1,000 or so people, and they are chanting together, it takes you. It literally lifts your spirit. And you feel yourself getting lighter and lighter. You may not levitate, but you feel
when you're with Mother, she does it every night for 3 hours. When you're with Mother and you go to her programs every night. We do the bhajans every night. And I love them. It's just so powerful, and it's invigorating. It gives you energy. It wakes you up.
And the other thing that is fascinating is the solfeggio music. That it has a frequency and a harmonic that it takes you into a sense of alpha theta, and that music is it's
and Richard
different.
Shulman's music does that too, and I use Richard Shulman's music. The other music that did that was Yogi Bhajan's music.
Yeah, I think Ted Winslow does some rather fantastic music as well.
Yeah, he's doing some sound work. That's good work.
Yeah, it's just and this is it's not. The old meditation music was very, very cute and quaint and lovely to listen to and lighthearted, but the solfeggio music, literally, it is like floating in amniotic fluid.
It's deeper. Yeah.
It's a frequency, and I learned that frequency is different from pitch and volume and
yes.
Stuff like that. It is a
pitch
different.
And volume have to do with hearing, and frequency has to do with the heartbeat and the blood.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
And it is amazing.
It's very deep, very deep.
Oh my goodness! It is just. It takes you out of the here and the now, and it puts you in a place where spirit is really present. And And it's a matter of taking the time, to give yourself 20 minutes to half an hour or longer if you really get off on it, and allow your body to sort of relax and your spirit to come in greater touch with your physical reality. It's an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's individual. It's up to each person to find what works for them, what feels right to them, and then
some people can't tolerate it because it's too deep and they're not ready yet. But when you can get there, wow!
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you've done a lot of work, and second of all, you're really rewarded for it, and it can open up those spiritual chakras too.
It puts you into a state of bliss.
Sure.
And that is a cool place to be, especially with reality as confusing and as complex as it is. We're getting close to the end here. I was having such a good time here. Your website once more, so that they can go to your website.
new-visions.com.
Is it hyphen or underscore?
Hyphen.
Okay.
Like what you put between phone numbers.
Gotcha. And your website is that's
my
your website.
Phone number. My 24-hour answering service is 201-934-8986. And
all of your books are on Amazon and your
Correct.
website. And the ones that we talked about mostly tonight were your unlimited realities and the new spiritual chakras, chakras, and ascension.
And ascension, yes.
And the new spiritual chakras, and I work a lot with chakras. I learned a lot from this book, so I would say that it's definitely worth people getting and reading and applying and paying attention to where the new energies are taking us, because it is very obviously insightfully channeled, and it does appear that we have a lot more work to do than we thought we did.
Yeah. I'm going to put that book in my body to write. I asked her to give me a book that would help mankind and be written by the golden pen of angels, and I wrote Ascension and the new spiritual chakras.
Well, you did a lot of good work here. You've got a lot of books out there, and they all are fascinating, and there's wonderful material in all of them. And I have to say that your style of writing is an easy read, and
thank you.
So it flows. You don't sit back and say, "Oh my God, I can't get through this." It's like, what happens next? Want to thank you so much for being here tonight, for sharing your time and your energy with me and my audience. And I look forward to keeping in touch with you and catching up from time to time.
No, thank you, Barbara. I appreciate that.
And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Certainly appreciate your time. And this will be up on YouTube if you guys want to listen to it again, hopefully. And we will be back next week, and look forward to having another person that we can pump them for all they're worth. Good night now. Good